just stared. Cardboard boxes, black garbage bags, her clothes spilling out onto the grass she had mowed just 3 days ago. Her grandmother's quilt, the one family heirloom she cherished, was draped over a box, getting damp from the sprinklers that were still running on their automatic timer. Her heart didn't race. It didn't pound. It just stopped. Like her body knew before her mind could catch up that everything was about to change. She got out of the car slowly. Her hands were steady as she walked up the path, past her belongings scattered like trash, toward the front door. The door she had painted blue last summer. The door with the smart lock she had installed. The door to the house she had bought with her own money, though Brandon didn't know that. Brandon didn't know a lot of things. The door opened before she could reach it. Brandon stood there and he wasn't alone. Behind him, wearing one of Naomi's robes, the silk one she had bought herself for her birthday, was Amber. Naomi recognized her from the company holiday party. Young, blonde, wearing too much makeup and a smile that said she'd already won. Naomi. Brandon's voice was flat. No guilt. No shame. Just irritation. Like she was interrupting his day. I packed your stuff. I think it's better if you stay somewhere else. She looked at him. Really looked at him. 6 years of marriage. 6 years of coming home to him, cooking dinners he barely thanked her for, listening to him complain about his boss, his coworkers, his stress. 6 years of making herself smaller so he could feel bigger. Stay somewhere else, she repeated. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Yeah. Look, I don't want to make this messy. He crossed his arms. He was wearing the designer watch she'd given him for Christmas. The shirt she'd picked up from the dry cleaners yesterday. Standing in the house she owned, next to the woman he'd been sleeping with, telling her to leave. Amber and I, we're together now. We have been for a while. You had to know this wasn't working. Amber shifted behind him and Naomi saw it. The little smirk. The way she pressed closer to Brandon, marking her territory. How long? Naomi asked. Does it matter? How long, Brandon? He sighed like she was being difficult. 2 years. Give or take. 2 years. 2 years of lying. 2 years of coming home to her after being with someone else. 2 years of I love you, and how was your day, honey? While he built a whole separate life behind her back. You need to go, Naomi. Don't make me call someone. And there it was. The threat. In her house. Wearing her gifts. Living the life she had provided. She could tell him right now. She could pull out her phone and show him the deed to this house, the one with her name on it, held in a corporate trust he never bothered to investigate. She could tell him about the company, about who really signed his paychecks, about the fact that everything he thought he had built was actually built on her foundation. But she didn't. Because Naomi had learned something important in the business world. Never show your cards until you're ready to win the whole game. Okay, she said simply. Brandon blinked. He'd expected a fight. Maybe tears. Definitely drama. Okay. I'll get my things. The important stuff is in the boxes. The rest, we can figure out later. We. He said we. Him and Amber. Like they were the team now. Naomi walked to her boxes. Her hands were still steady as she loaded them into her car. 1 trip. 2 trips. 3. Brandon and Amber went back inside after the first trip, closing the door behind them. She could hear them laughing. The quilt was damp. She carefully folded it and placed it in the front seat. Her grandmother's face flashed in her mind. Strong, brilliant, unshakable. The woman who had built an empire from nothing and taught Naomi to do the same. Don't let anyone make you small, baby girl, her grandmother used to say. And when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Brandon had just shown her exactly who he was. As Naomi loaded the last box, a neighbor across the street, Mrs. Patterson, stood on her porch watching with obvious pity. The old woman raised her hand in a small wave. Naomi waved back. By tomorrow the whole neighborhood would know. By next week his family would. No. Everyone would be talking about poor Naomi, kicked out of her own home, replaced by a younger woman. Let them talk. She got in her car and didn't look back at the house. Not once. She drove away from the blue door, the manicured lawn, the life she had built for a man who saw her as disposable. Her phone rang. The name on the screen made her take a breath. Robert Chin? No, wait, she needed to avoid that name. She had programmed it under RC, her chief financial officer. She answered on Bluetooth. Not now, Richard. I saw the security alert from your house. The cameras. Are you? I'm fine. Naomi, he can't just kick you out of your own property. I can have legal there in 20 minutes. We can have him removed. No. Her voice was calm. Cool. The voice she used in boardrooms when she was about to destroy a competitor. Don't do anything. Not yet. Richard was quiet for a moment. Then, you have a plan. I always have a plan. How long are you going to let him think he won? Naomi smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a woman who had built a billion-dollar empire in secret, who had played the long game before, who knew that revenge was a dish best served cold. Long enough for him to get comfortable, she said. Long enough for him to think he got away with it. Long enough for it to hurt when everything comes crashing down. She ended the call and drove toward the city, toward her real life, the one Brandon never knew existed. In her rearview mirror, her old neighborhood disappeared. That version of Naomi, the one who made herself small, who pretended to be ordinary, who loved a man who never deserved her, was gone. What Brandon didn't know, what he couldn't possibly imagine in his small, selfish mind, was that he hadn't just kicked out his wife. He had just declared war on the woman who owned everything he thought was his. And Naomi never lost. The penthouse suite at the Continental Hotel had floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the entire city. Naomi stood in front of them, still wearing the same clothes from earlier, and watched the sun set over the skyline she had helped build. Brandon thought she was a mid-level employee at some tech company. That was the story she'd told him when they met 6 years ago, and he'd never questioned it. Why would he? She dressed simply, drove a regular car, never flashed money or status. She'd played the part perfectly. The truth was so much bigger. Naomi Baptiste, formerly Naomi Williams before she married Brandon and took his ordinary last name to blend in, was the sole owner and CEO of Baptiste Technologies, a corporate empire worth $3 billion. But nobody knew that. Not the public, not the press, and certainly not her soon-to-be ex-husband. Her grandmother, Dorothy Williams, had started a small software company in the 1980s. While everyone dismissed her as just another woman trying to play in a man's world, Dorothy quietly built something extraordinary. By the time Naomi was born, Williams Tech was worth $50 million. By the time Naomi turned 16, it was worth $200 million. Dorothy had raised Naomi after her parents died in a car accident. She taught her everything: coding, business strategy, negotiation, investment. More importantly, she taught her about people. Money changes how people see you, Dorothy had said during one of their late-night talks in her office. They don't see you anymore. They see dollar signs. They see what they can get from you. If you want to know who really loves you, baby girl, you have to hide who you really are. Naomi had taken that lesson to heart. When Dorothy died 10 years ago, she left everything to Naomi. 23 years old and suddenly responsible for a $500 million company. The board had tried to push her out. They thought she was too young, too inexperienced, too soft. They had no idea who they were dealing with. Within 5 years, Naomi had restructured the entire company, diversified into cybersecurity and artificial intelligence, and grown the value to over $1 billion. She did it all while maintaining complete privacy. She operated through a complex network of holding companies and trusts. In public records, Baptiste Technologies was owned by BW Holdings, which was owned by Williams Trust Corporation, which was owned by a dozen smaller entities that all eventually led back to her. But her name never appeared on anything public. She attended board meetings remotely. She gave no interviews. She stayed invisible. 3 years into running the company, she'd been tired. Lonely. All her college friends had drifted away when she couldn't explain why she was always busy. Dating was impossible. Men either wanted her money when they figured out who she was, or they felt intimidated and insecure. So she decided to try something different. She'd created a fake identity in the company's HR system. Naomi Williams, mid-level project coordinator, making $75,000 a year. She'd rented a modest apartment, bought a regular car, and started living like a normal person. Just to see what it felt like. Just to meet someone who might actually love her for her. That's when she met Brandon. He'd been working in sales at one of her subsidiary companies, struggling to make his numbers. He was charming, confident, always talking about his big plans for the future. He'd asked her out after a company happy hour and she'd said yes. The first year was good. He treated her well, or at least she thought he did. He was attentive, romantic, always planning dates. When he proposed, she convinced herself she'd found what she was looking for. Genuine love. Looking back now, she could see the signs she'd missed. The way he always ordered the most expensive thing on the menu, even though he knew money was supposedly tight for both of them. The way he'd hinted that she should ask for a raise, get a better job, make more money. The way he'd been so excited when she told him about her inheritance from a grandmother, $50,000 she'd claimed, though she'd actually transferred $5 million into a joint account she carefully managed. He'd wanted to spend it immediately on a new car, a bigger apartment, expensive watches. She'd convinced him to be smart about it, to invest most of it to buy the house. He'd agreed because he thought he'd benefit from her small inheritance. If only he knew that the house he thought they'd bought together with her inheritance was actually purchased through one of her holding companies. That the mortgage he thought they were paying was actually just money she transferred to herself. That every comfort he enjoyed, every promotion he received at work, every opportunity that came his way, it all came from her. She'd given him a job in the marketing department of one of her fastest-growing subsidiaries. She'd made sure his managers knew he was valuable, that he got good reviews, that he felt successful. All the while, he'd come home and complained about his incompetent boss and the idiots in upper management who didn't appreciate his talent. He was complaining about her. He just didn't know it. And through it all, she played her part. The supportive wife. The woman who packed his lunches and picked up his dry cleaning. The one who listened to his dreams and encouraged him and made herself smaller so he could feel big. Why had she done it? Because she'd wanted so desperately to believe she'd found someone who loved her for her. Because she'd thought maybe, just maybe, if she could give him a good life without him knowing where it came from, his love would be real. But it wasn't real. It never had been. Her phone buzzed. A text from Richard. Hotel is secure. Your personal items from the house will be retrieved tomorrow through legal channels. The team is standing by for your instructions. She had a team. A whole team of people who managed her real life. Personal assistants, lawyers, security, financial advisors. None of them had ever met Brandon. He'd never even known they existed. Another text came through, this one from her lawyer, Patricia. Divorce papers are ready to file. How do you want to proceed? Naomi typed back. File through a standard attorney. Make it look normal. I'm asking for nothing in the settlement. He gets to keep whatever he thinks is his. Patricia's response was immediate. Nothing? Naomi, legally you're entitled to. I know what I'm legally entitled to. Trust me. This is part of the plan. She walked to the minibar and poured herself a glass of water. No alcohol. She needed her mind sharp. This was business now, and she was good at business. Her reflection stared back at her from the dark window. She looked tired. When had she started looking so tired? Brandon used to tell her she was beautiful, but those compliments had dried up over the last year. He'd started making little comments instead. About her weight. About her hair. About how she dressed. Always framed as concern or helpful suggestions, but she heard what he really meant. She wasn't good enough anymore. Amber was younger. Thinner. Blonder. Everything Naomi apparently wasn't. But here's what Brandon didn't understand. Naomi had been beautiful all along. She'd just been hiding it like she'd been hiding everything else. Tomorrow she'd stop hiding. She pulled out her tablet and opened the secured app that gave her access to her company's systems. With a few taps, she pulled up Brandon's employee file. His salary, $95,000 a year. His performance reviews, all excellent because she'd made sure of it. His benefits package, top-tier health insurance, company car allowance, stock options that would vest in 6 months. Stock options in a company he didn't know his wife owned. She smiled. Then she pulled up Amber's file. 27 years old. Secretary in the executive office suite. Making $42,000 a year. No stock options. Pretty standard benefits. But here was the interesting part. Amber had signed a company morality clause as part of her employment contract. All employees in the executive suites did. It was standard for positions with access to sensitive information. The clause specifically prohibited relationships with married co-workers. Naomi had written that clause herself 5 years ago. She took a screenshot of both files and sent them to Richard and Patricia in a secured message. Begin phase 1 tomorrow morning. Employment termination for cause. Both of them. Make it clean and legal. Patricia responded, You're sure about this? The timing will look suspicious if you do it this fast. They've been having an affair for 2 years in violation of company policy. That's not suspicious. That's just enforcing the rules. Richard added, What about the house? Give them 30 days notice through the trust. Standard eviction procedures. Everything by the book. And his car? Naomi had forgotten about the car. The BMW he loved so much. The one he'd gotten through the company's executive vehicle program. A program he barely qualified for but got approved for anyway because she'd made a call. The car is a company lease. Employment termination means vehicle return. Schedule the repossession. She set down her tablet and looked out at the city again. Somewhere out there, in the house with the blue door, Brandon and Amber were probably celebrating. Maybe they were in her bed. Maybe they were laughing about how easy it had been to get rid of her. Let them laugh. Let them have their moment. Because Naomi had learned something important from her grandmother. The best revenge wasn't loud or dramatic. It wasn't screaming or crying or begging someone to see your worth. The best revenge was quiet, calculated, and absolutely devastating. Brandon had kicked her out of her own house, thinking he was taking control of his life. He had no idea he'd just set his entire world on fire. Naomi didn't sleep that night. She sat in the penthouse with her laptop, digging through years of digital footprints, trying to understand how she'd missed the signs for so long. Her head of security, a former FBI agent named Janet Rodriguez, arrived at 7 in the morning with coffee and a thick folder. "You're not going to like this," Janet said, setting both down on the glass coffee table. "I already don't like any of it. Just show me." Janet opened the folder. Inside were photographs, printed emails, text message records, credit card statements. A complete timeline of Brandon's affair with Amber. "We went back 3 years like you asked," Janet said. "The relationship started 2 years and 3 months ago. First contact was at a company mixer. They exchanged numbers that night." The company mixer. Naomi remembered that event. She'd been there, standing next to Brandon, introducing him to people, making sure he networked with the right executives. And while she'd been helping his career, he'd been getting Amber's phone number. "They started having lunch together within a week," Janet continued. "Always at restaurants outside the office area. Smart enough to not eat in the company cafeteria together." The photographs showed Brandon and Amber at various restaurants. In some, they sat on the same side of the booth, close together. In others, they were leaning across tables, hands touching. The timestamps were brutal. Tuesday afternoons when Brandon had told Naomi he was in long meetings. Thursday lunches when he texted her that he was grabbing food at his desk. The first hotel visit was 6 weeks after they met, Janet said quietly. After that, it became regular. Usually twice a week. Sometimes at lunch, sometimes in the evenings when he told you he was working late. Working late. How many times had she packed him dinner to take to the office, believing he was putting in extra hours to build his career? Where did he get the money? Naomi asked. Hotel rooms aren't cheap. He has a credit card you don't know about. Look at this. Janet pulled out a statement. He opened it 18 months ago. The bill goes to his office address. He's been paying it from the joint checking account in small increments you probably didn't notice. Naomi studied the charges. Hotels. Restaurants. Jewelry. He'd bought Amber jewelry. Expensive jewelry. And flowers. He'd sent flowers to Amber's apartment multiple times. Brandon hadn't bought Naomi flowers in over a year. There's more, Janet said. These are screenshots from Amber's social media. Private accounts, but we got access. The screenshots showed Amber's Instagram posts. Most were public. Typical influencer stuff, carefully posed photos with inspirational captions. But the private account was different. Photos of expensive dinners with captions like, "When he treats you right." Photos of jewelry with, "He knows what I like." A picture of her hand with Brandon's hand, both wearing matching watches that Naomi now realized were bought with money from their joint account. But the worst were the messages. Janet had somehow gotten screenshots of a group chat between Amber and 3 of her friends. Naomi forced herself to read them. Amber, I swear he has no idea she owns everything else. Friend 1, wait what? His wife owns the company. Amber, not the company we work at. But like, everything else. The house, the cars, she's the one with money. He literally has nothing. He's so clueless. Friend 2, then why are you with him? Amber, because it's fun. And honestly, she's so boring. Like she doesn't even try. No makeup, no style, just blah. He deserves better. Friend 1, you're terrible L. Amber, I'm doing her a favor TBH. She should thank me for taking him off her hands. Naomi set down the phone printouts. Her hands were shaking now, not from sadness but from rage. Pure cold rage. There's one more thing, Janet said carefully. Last week Brandon went to a lawyer. A divorce lawyer. He was planning to file first, but I guess he decided the dramatic approach was better. He wanted to control the narrative, Naomi said. Her voice sounded distant to her own ears. Yeah. He was going to paint himself as the victim who fell out of love and found something real. Now he gets to be the guy who bravely ended his marriage. Except he didn't end anything. He just started a countdown on his own destruction. Naomi stood and walked to the window. The sun was fully up now, the city bustling below. Millions of people going about their lives, completely unaware that in this tower, A billionaire was planning to dismantle her husband's entire existence. "Do we have recordings?" she asked. Of them. Together. Talking about me." Janet hesitated. "We have some audio from his car. He doesn't know about the security system in the BMW. Do you really want to hear it?" "Yes." Janet pulled out her phone and played a recording. Brandon's voice came through clearly. "Finally told her today. God, you should have seen her face. Just standing there like she couldn't believe it." Amber's laugh. "Was she crying?" "No, that's the weird thing. She just took it. Like she expected it or something. Maybe she knew you were too good for her." "I mean..." Brandon paused. "I didn't want to be cruel about it, but yeah. You and me, we just make sense, you know? We're on the same level. She never wanted to go out, never wanted to do anything fun. Just work and cook in those boring Sunday dinners. Those dinners with her friends that you always complained about? God, her friends are the worst. Just sitting around talking about their basic jobs and their basic lives. Like I wanted more than that. And now you have more." Amber's voice turned flirty. "You have me." "Yeah, I do. And babe? Once the divorce is final, we're going to really live. No more pretending to care about what's for dinner or acting interested in her boring day. Just us." Janet stopped the recording. "There's 3 more hours of this. Do you want?" "No." Naomi's voice was ice. "I've heard enough." The thing that hurt most wasn't even the affair. It was the contempt. The complete and utter disrespect. She'd spent 6 years supporting this man, building him up, giving him everything he needed to succeed, and he thought she was boring. Basic. Beneath him. He had no idea that every opportunity he'd received, every promotion, every success he thought he'd earned, it all came from her. The boring wife he was so eager to discard was the only reason he had anything at all. "Janet," Naomi said, turning from the window, "I want you to compile everything. Every photo, every message, every receipt, every audio recording. Put it in a secure file. For the divorce? Not yet. For later. When the time is right." She pulled out her phone and called Patricia, her lawyer. Patricia answered immediately. "I was just about to call you. I filed the divorce papers an hour ago. Simple, clean, no-fault divorce. You're asking for nothing but your personal belongings." "Good. And the other matter?" "Richard is handling the employment terminations this morning. Both Brandon and Amber will be called into HR at 10 a.m. Naomi looked at her watch. It was 8:30. In 90 minutes, Brandon's carefully constructed world would start to crack. "Keep me updated," she said. "I want to know everything." After she hung up, Janet said quietly, "You know, we could destroy them in other ways. Make it easier on yourself." "No," Naomi said. "I'm not going to break any laws. I'm not going to do anything unethical. Everything I'm doing is completely legal and justified. That's what will make it perfect. He can't claim I abused my power because he doesn't even know I have power. When this is over, he'll have no one to blame but himself." Janet smiled slightly. "Your grandmother would be proud." The mention of Dorothy made Naomi's throat tight. Her grandmother had been ruthless in business but always fair. She taught Naomi that real power wasn't about being cruel, it was about being strategic. It was about knowing exactly when to move and exactly how hard to hit. She always said that when someone shows you who they really are, you should believe them and act accordingly, Naomi said. "Brandon showed me exactly who he is. A man who thinks he's smarter than everyone around him. A man who doesn't value loyalty or love or partnership. A man who measures worth by appearances and status." And Amber? She made her choice. She knew he was married. She participated in humiliating me. She gets what she gets. Naomi picked up her phone and scrolled through years of photos. Her and Brandon at their wedding. On vacation. At family dinners. In every photo she was smiling at him like he hung the moon. And in every photo from the last 2 years, if she looked closely, she could see it. The distance in his eyes. The way he leaned slightly away from her. The way his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. She'd been so busy trying to be the perfect wife that she hadn't noticed she was married to a man who'd stopped loving her. If he ever had. Delete. 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 She removed every photo of him from her phone. "It's almost 10, Janet said. Naomi took a deep breath. This was it. The beginning of the end. "Let's watch it happen," she said. Janet pulled up a secure video feed on her tablet. It showed the HR conference room at Baptiste Technologies' main subsidiary, the one where Brandon worked. The camera angle was perfect. Naomi could see everything. At exactly 10 a.m., Brandon walked into the conference room, confident and smiling. He wore his best suit, the one Naomi had bought him for their anniversary. He sat down across from the HR director and a company lawyer, still smiling, probably thinking this was about a promotion. The HR director slid a piece of paper across the table. Brandon's smile faded as he read. Then it disappeared completely. His mouth moved. The HR director spoke calmly, professionally. The lawyer remained expressionless. Brandon stood up, angry now. He was gesturing, his face red. The HR director didn't react, just kept speaking in that same calm tone. Finally, security appeared at the door. Brandon looked shocked. He grabbed the paper and stormed out, security following him to his desk to collect his personal items. 20 minutes later, the same scene played out with Amber. But her reaction was different. Tears, pleading, hands clasped together as if begging. The HR director shook her head. The lawyer slid the termination papers forward. Amber left the building crying. "It's done," Janet said. Naomi felt nothing. No satisfaction. No joy. Just a cold sense of justice being served. "Phase 1 complete," she said. "Now we wait." By lunchtime, Brandon had called Naomi 17 times. She didn't answer. He'd sent 12 text messages, each one escalating from confused to angry to desperate. "Brandon, we need to talk. Call me." "Brandon, Naomi, seriously. Something happened at work." "Brandon, they fired me. Can you believe this? I need you to call me back." "Brandon, fine, ignore me. But we still need to figure out the house and bills. Or did you forget about adult responsibilities?" "Brandon, Amber got fired too. This is insane. Someone is targeting us." That last message made Naomi smile. Someone is targeting us. He was starting to feel it, that sense of unease, the first hint that things weren't adding up. Good. She was in her real office now, at the top of the Baptiste Technologies Tower. 52nd floor, corner office. 3 walls of windows overlooking the city. Her desk was sleek glass and chrome. The bookshelves held awards she'd won under the company name. Innovator of the Year, Top Tech CEO Under 40, Business Excellence Award. None of them bore her personal name, just Baptiste Technologies founder and CEO. Richard knocked and entered with a tablet. "The board meeting is in 10 minutes. Are you sure you want to attend in person today?" "Yes." It's time they saw me. 4 years she'd attended board meetings remotely, her face obscured on video calls, her voice distorted slightly through audio filters. It was easier that way. Less questions. Less attention. But things were changing now. She was done hiding. "They're going to have questions," Richard warned. "About the sudden terminations. About why we let go of 2 employees without more progressive discipline. Then we'll show them the evidence. The affair violated company policy. Amber had access to confidential information and was in a relationship with a married co-worker. Brandon was part of a relationship that created a hostile work environment. Both terminations were justified and legal. Some of the board members are going to wonder about the timing. The timing is irrelevant. We just discovered the violation. We acted. That's what good companies do." Richard nodded but looked uncomfortable. He'd been with her for 8 years. He knew her better than almost anyone. "You're going to burn it all down, aren't you?" he said quietly. "Not burn. Dismantle. Carefully, legally, and completely." She stood and smoothed down her dress, a designer piece she'd kept in her office closet. Black, elegant, powerful. She looked nothing like the woman Brandon had kicked to the curb yesterday. "And the divorce?" "Patricia filed this morning. Simple terms. I'm asking for nothing except my personal belongings. No alimony, no asset split, nothing." "He's going to think he won." "He's supposed to think he won." Richard smiled slightly. "Your grandmother really did teach you everything." The board meeting was in the main conference room, a space designed to intimidate. 20-foot ceilings, a table that sat 30 people, and the company logo etched into the glass wall behind the head chair. When Naomi walked in, every conversation stopped. The board was composed of 10 people. Venture capitalists who'd invested early, retired tech executives who provided guidance, and a few industry experts. They'd all worked with her remotely for years, but only 3 had ever met her in person. "Good afternoon," she said, taking her seat at the head of the table. "Thank you all for being here." An older man named Gerald spoke first. "Ms. Baptiste, this is unexpected. You've never attended in person before." "Things are changing," she said simply. "I'm tired of hiding." A woman named Susan, one of the few board members Naomi actually respected, leaned forward. "We've all been curious about you for years. It's nice to finally see you face to face." "Likewise." Naomi opened her tablet. Let's begin. Richard, please present Q3 financial results. The meeting proceeded smoothly. The company was thriving, profits up 18%, 3 new contracts signed, expansion into 2 new markets approved. Everything was perfect on paper. Then Gerald brought up the terminations. 2 employees were let go this morning, he said, reading from his notes. Mid-level marketing manager and an executive secretary. Both for policy violations. Can you explain the circumstances? Naomi nodded to Richard, who pulled up a presentation on the main screen. Both employees were in a romantic relationship that violated company policy, Richard explained. The male employee was married. The female employee had access to sensitive company information. Their relationship created a conflict of interest and a potential security risk. We have documented evidence of the relationship spanning over 2 years. 2 years? Susan asked. Why is this just coming to light now? We only recently became aware of the extent of the relationship, Naomi said smoothly. Once we had sufficient evidence, we acted immediately. Gerald frowned. This seems sudden. Usually we have progressive discipline. Usually we don't have employees flagrantly violating ethics policies for years, Naomi interrupted. Her voice was calm but firm. Both signed agreements acknowledging these policies when they were hired. Both chose to violate them. The company's legal counsel reviewed the terminations and found them justified. Still, Gerald persisted, 2 terminations in 1 day sends a message. It sends the message that we have standards, Naomi said. That we expect our employees to conduct themselves professionally. That we don't tolerate behavior that puts the company at risk. Would you prefer we ignore policy violations? Gerald sat back, properly chastised. Susan was watching Naomi with an interesting expression, half curiosity, half respect. I think what Gerald is trying to understand is whether there's more to this story. In all the years we've worked with you, you've never taken such direct action against employees. Smart woman. Too smart. There's nothing more to the story, Naomi said. 2 employees violated policy. They were terminated. That's how companies should operate. Based on rules, not emotions. The meeting continued for another hour, but Naomi could feel the shift. The board members were looking at her differently now. Before, she'd been a voice on a screen. Now she was real. Present. Powerful. After the meeting ended, Susan caught up with her in the hallway. That was impressive, Susan said. The way you handled Gerald. He needed to be handled. Can I ask you something off the record? Naomi waited. Those 2 employees. Were they connected to you personally? Smart. Too smart. Why would you ask that? Because in 8 years on this board, I've never seen you attend a meeting in person. I've never seen you take direct action against specific employees. I've never seen you be anything but completely hands-off with day-to-day operations. And now, suddenly you're here. In person. The day after 2 people are fired. It feels personal. Naomi met her eyes. What happens in my personal life is separate from my business decisions. But they did intersect. Didn't they? For a long moment, Naomi said nothing. Then, if they did, it doesn't change the fact that both terminations were justified. The evidence is clear. The policy violations are documented. Everything was done legally and appropriately. Susan nodded slowly. I'm not criticizing you. I'm just impressed. Most people would have used their power for revenge in messy, obvious ways. You're doing it clean. Smart. I'm not doing anything except running my company according to its policies. Of course. Susan smiled. And if running your company according to its policies happens to also dismantle someone's life? Well, that's just business. She walked away, leaving Naomi alone in the hallway. Back in her office, Naomi found Patricia waiting with more papers. He got the divorce notice, Patricia said. His lawyer called me an hour ago. Brandon is confused. Confused how? You're asking for nothing. No alimony, no property split, no support. His lawyer thinks it's a trick. It's not a trick. I don't want anything from Brandon because there's nothing of his I want. His lawyer said Brandon wants to talk to you. Work things out. Naomi laughed. Actually laughed. Work things out? Yesterday he threw my belongings on the lawn. Today he wants to work things out. Well, he's unemployed now. And apparently Amber is not taking the unemployment well. His lawyer said something about reassessing the situation. Of course. Without a job, without money, Brandon was suddenly interested in working things out with his wife. The wife he didn't know had money. The wife he thought was as ordinary and broke as he now was. Tell his lawyer that I have nothing to say to Brandon, Naomi said. The divorce terms are final. He can sign them or we can go to court, but either way the marriage is over. He's not going to take this well. I don't care. After Patricia left, Naomi pulled up the security feed from the house. The camera she'd installed years ago, Brandon didn't know about those either, showed him pacing through the living room, phone pressed to his ear. Probably calling friends, family, anyone who might help him understand why his life was suddenly falling apart. Amber was there too, sitting on the couch, looking at her phone with a miserable expression. Naomi zoomed in on Amber's screen. She was scrolling through job listings, her face growing more distressed with each swipe. The house phone rang. Brandon answered. From the camera audio, another thing he didn't know existed, she could hear his side of the conversation. I don't know, Mom. They just fired me. No warning. Something about policy violations. I have no idea. Yes, Amber too. No, I don't think Naomi had anything to do with it, she's just a... He stopped mid-sentence. Naomi watched his face change. The confusion. The first glimmer of suspicion. Mom, I have to go, he said abruptly and hung up. He turned to Amber. What company did you say Naomi worked for? I don't know. Some tech thing. Why? What tech thing? What was the name? I don't remember. She never talked about work. Why does it matter? Brandon pulled out his laptop and started typing frantically. Naomi watched him search. Watched him click through pages. Watched his face grow paler with each passing minute. He was starting to put it together. Not all of it. Not yet. But the pieces were beginning to form a picture he didn't like. This doesn't make sense, he muttered. None of this makes sense. But it did make sense. Perfect sense. Brandon just didn't know enough to see the full picture yet. Soon though. Very soon. Naomi closed the security feed and opened her calendar. Tomorrow she had meetings with 3 different venture capital firms. Next week she was keynoting a tech conference. In 2 weeks she had an interview scheduled with a major business magazine, her first public interview in 10 years. It was time to step into the light. And when she did, Brandon would finally understand exactly what he'd thrown away. Brandon Mitchell was having the worst week of his life, and he couldn't understand why. It started with being fired on Tuesday. By Wednesday his bank accounts were a disaster. Thursday morning a lawyer he'd never hired delivered divorce papers. And now, Friday afternoon, he was sitting in his living room staring at an eviction notice. This can't be right, he said for the 3rd time, reading the legal document again. The house is ours. We bought it 4 years ago. Amber was curled up on the couch, scrolling through her phone, looking for jobs she was never going to get. Well, apparently it's not yours, she snapped. Can you fix this? I can't deal with this right now. Brandon wanted to throw something. 3 days ago life was perfect. He'd finally gotten rid of Naomi, boring, plain, going nowhere Naomi, and now he was free. Free to be with Amber, to live the life he deserved, to move forward without dead weight dragging him down. Except nothing was working out the way it should. His phone rang. The bank. Again. Mr. Mitchell, this is Rachel from Capital One. I'm calling about your credit card account ending in 4782. We've received a dispute from the account owner claiming unauthorized use. That's my card, Brandon interrupted. I've had it for 18 months. According to our records, the account is registered to a business entity, and you were listed as an authorized user through your employment. Now that your employment has been terminated, the primary account holder has disputed several charges and requested the account be closed. What? No, that's my card. I pay the bill. Actually, sir, the bills were paid from a corporate account. Do you have your own credit card we can transfer the balance to? Brandon felt his chest tighten. How much is the balance? $32,418. The room tilted. That's not right. Would you like me to email you the statement? The charges go back 18 months. Hotels, restaurants, jewelry purchases, florist charges. Brandon hung up. His hands were shaking. What's wrong? Amber asked, finally looking up from her phone. The credit card. The one I've been using. It's not mine. It was through work. And now they want me to pay back $32,000. Amber sat up straight. What do you mean it's not yours? You've been using it for over a year. I thought it was mine. I thought... He stopped. What had he thought? He'd gotten the card in the mail with a welcome letter on company letterhead. He'd assumed it was a perk, a benefit, something he'd earned through his excellent performance at work. But looking back, there had never been paperwork. Never a credit check. Never a formal approval process. Someone had just given it to him. His phone buzzed. A text from the BMW dealership. Your vehicle lease has been terminated. Please return the vehicle by 5 p.m. today or it will be reported as stolen. No, Brandon said out loud. No, no, no. What now? Amber's voice had an edge of panic. The car. They're taking the car. Can they do that? Apparently. He pulled up the lease agreement on his phone. There it was in section 14. Vehicle lease is contingent on continued employment with Baptiste Technologies subsidiaries. Termination of employment results in immediate lease cancellation. Baptiste Technologies, the parent company of where he worked. The company that owned dozens of smaller tech firms including his. The company that was apparently taking everything from him. This is insane, he said, standing up and pacing. It's like someone is systematically destroying my life. Who would do that? I don't know. An enemy at work? Someone I beat out for a promotion? This has to be illegal. You can't just fire someone and then take away their housing and their car and their credit cards. Actually, a new voice said from the doorway, we can. Brandon spun around. A woman in a business suit stood in his entryway. Behind her were two men in security uniforms and another person holding a clipboard. Who the hell are you? Brandon demanded. I'm Jennifer Lee from Property Management Services. We represent the trust that owns this property. I'm here to oversee your move out. I'm not moving out. This is my house. Jennifer consulted her clipboard. Actually, this property is owned by the BW Holdings Trust. According to our records, you've been occupying it under a month-to-month arrangement. The trust is terminating that arrangement. You have 30 days to vacate as stated in the notice you received. Month to month? We bought this house. We have a mortgage. You've been making payments to the trust, yes. But there's no mortgage in your name, Mr. Mitchell. The property has always been owned free and clear by the trust. She handed him a document. Here's the full deed history. As you can see, it was purchased 4 years ago by BW Holdings Trust for cash. You've never been on the title. Brandon read the document, his vision blurring. It was true. The house had been bought by some trust company he'd never heard of. For $850,000. In cash. But that didn't make sense. He and Naomi had bought this house together. With her inheritance money. He remembered signing papers, remembered the celebration, Actually, what did he remember? He remembered Naomi saying she'd handle the paperwork because she was better at that stuff. He remembered her saying she'd set up the payments to be automatic. He remembered moving in and assuming everything was in both their names because they were married. He never actually checked. This is a mistake, he said weakly. It's not a mistake, Mr. Mitchell. You have 30 days. After that, if you haven't vacated voluntarily, we'll begin formal eviction proceedings. Jennifer turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and the BMW in the driveway? The repossession company will be here in approximately 20 minutes. I'd suggest you remove any personal items from it. She left, her security team following. Brandon stood frozen in the entryway of a house he thought was his, staring at papers that proved it never was. Amber's voice was small. Brandon? What's happening? I don't know. His mind was racing, trying to piece together something that made sense. The house wasn't his. The credit card wasn't his. The car wasn't his. His job was gone. Everything he'd thought he'd built, was disappearing. And Naomi. Quiet, boring Naomi who worked some mid-level job and never caused problems. She'd filed for divorce asking for nothing. Not the house. Not alimony. Not support. Nothing. Because she didn't need anything. Because maybe she'd never needed anything. Brandon pulled out his laptop and started searching. Naomi Baptiste, he typed. Nothing. Just a LinkedIn profile for a project coordinator that hadn't been updated in years. He tried Naomi Williams, her maiden name. Still nothing useful. Then he tried BW Holdings Trust. Pages of corporate records, most of them redacted or private. But one article from a business journal mentioned it in passing. BW Holdings Trust, a private entity believed to be connected to Baptiste Technologies founder. Baptiste Technologies. His company's parent company. The company that just fired him. Brandon's hands were shaking as he typed Baptiste Technologies founder. The search results were sparse. The company was notoriously private. But there were a few things. Baptiste Technologies, founded by Dorothy Williams in 1982. Passed to sole heir upon Williams' death in 2015. Current owner maintains complete privacy. Estimated worth over $3 billion. Dorothy Williams. Naomi Williams. No, Brandon whispered. No way. But even as he said it, pieces were clicking together. The inheritance, that had seemed too good to be true. The way Naomi had always been vague about her work. The way she'd always had money for things when they needed it, even though her salary supposedly wasn't that high. The way she'd handled buying the house. He pulled up his work email, access was still active for another few hours, and searched for anything related to Baptiste Technologies. There were dozens of emails from HR, all digitally signed by the parent company. He'd never paid attention to them before. But now he opened one from 3 years ago. Congratulations on your promotion to marketing manager. This advancement comes with increased compensation and benefits as approved by corporate oversight. Approved by corporate oversight. He opened another email from 2 years ago. Your performance review has been rated excellent. Continue the outstanding work. Your contributions are valued at the highest level. Highest level. He opened his employment contract, the one he'd signed 6 years ago when he first got hired. There, buried in page 8, employee acknowledges that Baptiste Technologies and its subsidiaries reserve the right to make personnel decisions based on corporate strategic needs. 6 years ago, when he just started dating Naomi. Oh my God, he said out loud. Amber was behind him now, looking at the screen. What is it? Naomi. I think Naomi is... He couldn't even say it. It was too insane. But his phone was ringing again. A number he didn't recognize. He answered. Brandon Mitchell? A man's voice, professional. Yeah. This is Thomas from Capital Bank. We're calling about the joint checking and savings accounts you hold with Naomi Baptiste. She's requested that her name be removed from all accounts and all joint assets be liquidated and divided. Do you consent to this? Divided? What are you talking about? Those accounts only have like $5,000 in them. Pause. Mr. Mitchell, the joint savings account currently has $1,200,000. The checking account has approximately $80,000. Are you not aware of these balances? The phone slipped from Brandon's hand. $1 million. In their savings account. Money Naomi had put there without telling him. Money he'd thought didn't exist. Amber picked up his phone. Hello? Yes, this is his girlfriend. Can you tell us what's going on? What do you mean $1 million? Brandon wasn't listening anymore. He was pulling up their joint bank account online, entering the password Naomi had set up years ago. The account loaded. Savings. $1,247,392.18. Checking. $79,843.29. He scrolled through the transaction history. Deposits. Hundreds of them. Some small, some huge, all from BW Holdings Trust, or Williams Estate Management, or Baptiste Corp Services. All going back 6 years. All from companies he was now realizing might be connected to his wife. His boring, plain, nothing special wife, who apparently had millions of dollars he never knew about. Brandon? Amber's voice sounded far away. The bank is saying they need your approval to split the accounts. What do you want me to tell them? What did he want them to do? His mind couldn't process what he was seeing. Nothing made sense. Everything he'd thought he knew was wrong. Brandon. Amber snapped. They need an answer. Tell them. His voice cracked. Tell them to do whatever Naomi wants. Because suddenly Brandon understood something. Whatever Naomi wanted, Naomi got. She'd always gotten it. He'd just been too stupid to realize he was never in control of anything. The repossession truck pulled up outside. The 30-day eviction notice sat on the counter. His credit cards were canceled. His job was gone. And somewhere out there, Naomi, his boring, plain, ordinary wife, was probably sitting in an office he'd never seen, making decisions that were destroying his entire world. We need to find her, he said suddenly. We need to talk to her. Figure out what's happening. You think she's doing this? Amber asked. Brandon looked at her. Really looked at her. Amber, who he'd thought was the upgrade. Who he'd left his wife for. Who was now standing in a house they were being evicted from, with no job and no prospects, asking obvious questions. Yeah, he said. I think she's doing exactly this. By Sunday morning, Brandon and Amber's relationship was cracking under pressure. We need to leave, Amber said, throwing clothes into a suitcase. This place isn't even yours. We should go stay with my parents until we figure things out. Your parents live in a 2-bedroom condo with your younger brother, Brandon said. Where exactly are we going to sleep? I don't know. But we can't stay here. What if they come back and kick us out early? Brandon was sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers and printouts. He'd spent the last 48 hours trying to understand what was happening. The picture that emerged was devastating. The house, owned by BW Holdings Trust, which seemed to be connected to Baptiste Technologies. The cars, both leased through company programs he'd somehow qualified for despite barely meeting the requirements. The credit cards, corporate accounts he'd been added to without proper authorization. His job promotions, all approved by corporate oversight, with notes in his file about special consideration. Everything. Every single thing he'd thought he'd earned or owned or built was either gone or never his in the first place. And at the center of it all was Naomi. He'd finally tracked down her real LinkedIn profile, not the fake mid-level employee one, but a private profile that listed her as founder and CEO, Baptiste Technologies. The profile photo was professional. Naomi in a suit, looking confident and powerful, nothing like the woman who used to cook his dinner. "I'm going to call her again," he said, picking up his phone. "She's not going to answer. She hasn't answered in 3 days. She has to answer eventually. We're still married. Are we?" She filed for divorce. Brandon looked at Amber. "Wait, you and me, we're not married." Amber flushed. "That's not what I meant." But it was what she meant. And they both knew it. His phone buzzed. Not a call, a text from an unknown number. "Stop calling Naomi. She has nothing to say to you. All communication goes through her attorney. Patricia Okonkwo, legal counsel." Brandon's hands tightened on the phone. Her attorney? Another text. "You have 28 days remaining to vacate the property at 847 Maple Drive. Please arrange for your departure. Property Management Services." Then another. "Your final paycheck has been processed and direct deposited minus taxes and the $847 owed for personal use of company equipment. HR Department." The messages kept coming. Every debt, every cancellation, every door closing. All professionally worded. All perfectly legal. All devastating. "They're destroying us," Amber said quietly. "Whoever owns that company, they're making sure we have nothing." "It's not whoever owns the company," Brandon said. "It's Naomi. She owns the company. She owns everything. That doesn't make sense. How could she be a secret billionaire? She drove a Toyota. She shopped at Target. Because she wanted to." Brandon's voice rose. "Don't you get it? She was hiding. Playing some sick game. Probably laughing at me the whole time. Why would she do that? Why would she do that?" Brandon had been asking himself the same question. And slowly, horribly, an answer was forming. He remembered when they first met. He'd been struggling at work, behind on his sales numbers, stressed about money. She'd seemed so normal, so approachable. Not like other women who wanted expensive dates and designer bags. She'd been happy with pizza and movie nights. And she'd been so supportive when he'd gotten promoted a few months after they started dating. So proud of him. Like she really believed in him. Because she'd given him the promotion. She'd probably given him everything. "She was testing me," he said slowly. "She wanted to see if I'd love her without knowing about her money. And you failed the test by cheating on her?" Brandon shot Amber a look. "I fell in love with you. Sure. Because I was young and pretty and exciting. Not because you were bored with your boring wife who you thought had nothing to offer." Amber's voice was bitter. "That's not." "Yes, it is." Amber stood up. "You told me she was holding you back. That she was basic. That you deserved better. And now it turns out she was a billionaire the whole time and you threw her away like garbage. So did you? You knew I was married. I thought I was getting a man with prospects. Not some guy who's about to be homeless." The words hung in the air between them. Brandon felt something inside him break. Amber wasn't here because she loved him. She was here because she thought he was going somewhere. Now that he was going nowhere, worse than nowhere, she was already looking for the exit. "So that's it," he said quietly. "Now that things are hard, you're done? I didn't sign up for this. You signed up to sleep with a married man. You signed up to help me kick my wife out of her own house. You signed up for all of it. And I'm paying for it too. I lost my job. I have no savings. My reputation is ruined." Amber was crying now. "Everyone at work knows what we did. I can't get a job in this city. My friends are all talking behind my back. My parents are ashamed of me. All because you said we'd be together. You said we'd have a life. We will have a life." "What life? We're being evicted. You have no job. No car. No money. What kind of life is that?" Brandon had no answer. His phone rang. His mother. "Brandon, honey, I just saw the news," she said when he answered. "Is it true?" "Is what true?" "About Naomi." It's all over Facebook. Someone from your neighborhood posted that Naomi is the billionaire who owns Baptiste Technologies. Is that real? Brandon closed his eyes. Of course it was spreading. In this neighborhood, with these people who loved gossip, the story of Brandon Mitchell kicking out his secret billionaire wife would spread like wildfire. It's real, Mom. Oh, honey. His mother's voice was full of pity. What did you do? What did I do? She lied to me for 6 years. She didn't lie. She just didn't tell you everything. There's a difference. And you kicked her out? For another woman? Mom? Your father and I raised you better than this. That girl was good to you. She supported you. And you threw her away the second you thought you could do better. She was testing me. Setting me up to fail. Or maybe she just wanted to be loved for who she was, not for what she had. Did you ever think of that? Brandon hung up. He couldn't deal with this. Any of it. Amber was still packing. I'm going to my parents' house, she said. You can come if you want. Or not. I don't care anymore. So we're over? She looked at him with something like pity. Brandon, we were over the second you lost everything. I just didn't want to admit it. She left with 2 suitcases and didn't look back. Brandon sat alone in the house that wasn't his, surrounded by furniture that wasn't his, wearing clothes he'd probably bought with credit cards that weren't his, and felt the full weight of what he'd done crash down on him. He'd had everything. A wife who loved him. A comfortable life. A good job. Security. And he'd thrown it all away because he'd wanted more. Because he'd thought he deserved better. Because some young, pretty girl paid attention to him and made him feel special. He pulled out his phone and looked at old photos. There was one from their wedding day. Naomi looked so happy, so in love. She was looking at him like he hung the moon. And he'd looked at her like she was his prize. He'd never really seen her, had he? He'd seen the version of her she presented. The simple, supportive wife. He'd never asked questions. Never wondered why she was so calm about money. Never questioned how they could afford such a nice house on their combined salaries. He'd never really known her at all. And now he never would. His phone buzzed one more time. A news alert. Reclusive tech billionaire Naomi Baptiste makes first public appearance. Announces major expansion plans. There was a photo. Naomi standing at a podium, looking stunning in a navy suit, speaking to a room full of reporters and business leaders. She looked confident, powerful, completely in control. She looked nothing like his wife. Or maybe this had been his wife all along, and he'd just been too blind to see it. The doorbell rang. Brandon answered it to find a process server. Brandon Mitchell? Yeah. You've been served. The man handed him papers and left. Brandon opened the envelope. Inside were the finalized divorce papers. Simple, clean, exactly like Patricia's text had said. Naomi was asking for nothing except her personal belongings, which had already been removed from the house. At the bottom was a handwritten note in Naomi's handwriting. Sign these and move on with your life. This is the last kindness I'll show you. The last kindness. Because everything she was doing, destroying his job, taking his house, canceling his cards, exposing the truth, that wasn't kindness. That was justice. And Brandon was finally beginning to understand the difference. Brandon signed the divorce papers on Monday morning and sent them back through Patricia's office. Not because he wanted to, but because he had no choice. Naomi held all the cards. She'd always held all the cards. By Monday afternoon, the story had gone viral. Secret billionaire wife kicked out by clueless husband was trending on Twitter. Someone had leaked the story to a tech blog and from there it exploded. Within hours, every news outlet was covering it. Within a day, Brandon's name and face were everywhere. His phone was flooded with messages from reporters, friends, former coworkers, even strangers. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. How could you be so stupid? A few people were sympathetic. His father called to say he was sorry Brandon was going through this. His college roommate sent a text, "Hang in there, man." But most people were mocking him. The internet was particularly brutal. This man really threw out a billionaire because he thought he could do better. The audacity of mediocre men is truly limitless. She was playing 4D chess while he was playing checkers with crayons. Imagine being broke, unemployed, and homeless because you fumbled a billionaire. Couldn't be me. The memes were worse. Someone had photoshopped Brandon's face onto a clown. Another showed him looking confused with the caption, POV, "You just realized you're an idiot." There was even a TikTok trend called the Brandon Challenge, where people acted out throwing away something valuable without realizing its worth. He'd become a joke. A cautionary tale. A symbol of masculine arrogance and stupidity. And through it all, Naomi said nothing. She gave no interviews about him. Didn't respond to questions about their marriage. Just focused on her business, her expansion plans, her future. It was like he'd never existed. On Wednesday, a reporter found him at a coffee shop. "Mr. Mitchell, can I ask you a few questions about your marriage to Naomi Baptiste?" No comment. "Did you know about her wealth when you ended the relationship?" No comment. "Is it true you were having an affair with a coworker?" Brandon stood up to leave, but the reporter followed him. "People are saying you kicked her out of her own house. Is that accurate?" I said no comment. "Are you hoping to reconcile now that you know the truth?" Brandon spun around. "Are you serious? You think I want her back because of her money? That's exactly what everyone thinks of me, isn't it? That I'm some gold digger who regrets losing the cash cow?" The reporter was recording everything. "So you don't want to reconcile?" "I want to be left alone." But he didn't get left alone. The video of him yelling at the reporter went viral too. Now he wasn't just a fool, he was an angry fool. A man who'd lost everything and was taking it out on everyone around him. By Thursday he had to leave the house early. Not because he wanted to, but because news vans were parked outside. Reporters were camping on the lawn. Neighbors were being interviewed about what kind of person he was. Mrs. Patterson across the street told a camera crew, "He always seemed nice, but you never really know people, do you? That poor woman. She was always so sweet. Helped me carry my groceries once when my arthritis was bad." His own neighbor thought Naomi was a saint and he was trash. He ended up at a cheap motel outside the city. $28 a night, thin walls, questionable stains on the carpet. A far cry from the house with the blue door. That's where he was when his phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Against his better judgment, he answered. "Mr. Mitchell, this is Jackson Steele. I'm a producer for Second Chances, the reality show. We're interested in telling your story." "My story?" "About your marriage, the divorce, your wife's secret identity. America loves a redemption arc, and we think you could be very compelling television. You want to put me on TV? To talk about the worst mistake of my life. We want to give you a platform to tell your side. Right now the narrative is very one-sided. You're the villain. But what if you could show people the real you? Show them that you're a good guy who made a mistake." Brandon almost laughed. A good guy who made a mistake. That's what they were calling it. Not a cheater. Not a man who threw away his wife like garbage. Just a guy who made a mistake. "How much?" Brandon asked. "Excuse me? How much do I get paid for this?" Pause. "We can offer $50,000 for the season. More if ratings are good." $50,000. It was more money than Brandon had right now. More money than he'd see anytime soon. But it would mean going on TV. Telling millions of people about how he'd betrayed his wife, lost everything, and become a cautionary tale. "I'll think about it," he said and hung up. His email dinged. A message from Patricia Okonkwo, Naomi's lawyer. "Mr. Mitchell, the 30-day notice period has expired in 2 days. Please confirm your move-out date. If you need additional time, we can arrange a 1-week extension for $500 per day." $500 per day to stay in the house he thought was his. He typed back, "I'll be out in 2 days." There was nowhere to go. No money for a real apartment. No job prospects because every company that Googled his name saw the scandal. No friends willing to let him crash because they were all too embarrassed to be associated with him. He'd burned every bridge and now he was standing in the ashes. Friday morning, his mother called again. "Brandon, you need to apologize to her." "To who? Naomi?" "Yes, to Naomi. You need to make this right." "Mom, she doesn't want to hear from me." Her lawyer made that very clear. Then go through her lawyer. Write a letter. Do something. Because right now, the whole world thinks you're a monster. "I'm not a monster. You just what? You just cheated on your wife and threw her out and humiliated her? And now that you know she has money, you just want to pretend it never happened." "I don't want her money." "Then what do you want?" Brandon didn't have an answer. What did he want? Forgiveness? A do-over? To go back in time and make different choices? "I want to understand," he finally said. "Why she did it. Why she hid everything from me. Maybe because she knew exactly what kind of man you are. And she was right." His mother hung up. Brandon sat in his motel room and finally let himself cry. Not because he'd lost money, he'd never known the money existed, so how could he miss it? Not even because he'd lost the house or the car or the job. He cried because he'd lost Naomi. The real Naomi. The woman who was smart enough to build a billion-dollar empire. Strong enough to hide it for years. Patient enough to wait for him to show his true colors. And confident enough to walk away when he did. He'd never really known her. He'd been married to a stranger. No, he'd been married to someone extraordinary and he'd been too blind to see it. And now she was gone. Saturday morning, moving day, Brandon packed his belongings into a rented U-Haul. He didn't have much. Most of the furniture had stayed with the house because it turned out he'd never actually bought it. Naomi had. Through her trust. Like everything else. He was loading the last box when a town car pulled up. Patricia Okonkwo stepped out, wearing a sharp suit and carrying a briefcase. "Mr. Mitchell. Come to watch me leave?" "Actually, Miss Baptiste asked me to give you something." She handed him an envelope. Brandon opened it. Inside was a check for $20,000. "What is this?" "Miss Baptiste wanted me to inform you that she's calculated the value of assets you brought into the marriage, adjusted for inflation and market returns. That amount comes to approximately $18,000. She's rounding up to $20,000 to cover moving expenses." Brandon stared at the check. "She's giving me money?" "She's returning what was yours. Nothing more, nothing less. She also wanted me to tell you that this concludes all financial obligations between you. After this, you will have no further contact. No calls, no texts, no attempts to see her. If you violate this, she will pursue legal action for harassment. I just want to talk to her. To explain." "There's nothing to explain. You showed her exactly who you are. She believed you. Now it's over." Patricia got back in her car. "Cash that check and move on with your life, Mr. Mitchell. It's more than you deserve." She drove away. Brandon looked at the check. $20,000. A generous gift from a woman he'd betrayed. A final goodbye from someone he'd never really known. He got in his U-Haul and drove away from the house with the blue door for the last time. In his rearview mirror, he saw Mrs. Patterson standing on her porch, watching him go. She didn't wave this time. Nobody waved. He'd become exactly what he deserved to be. A cautionary tale about a man who had everything and threw it away because he thought he deserved more. And somewhere in the city, in an office he'd never seen, Naomi was probably already moving on with her life. Without him. As it should be. The interview aired on a Tuesday evening. Naomi sat in the penthouse, watching herself on the large screen. It was strange seeing this version of herself, confident, articulate, powerful. The version she'd hidden for years. The interviewer, a well-known business journalist named Monica Harper, sat across from on-screen Naomi in the studio. "Ms. Baptiste, you've been called the most mysterious CEO in technology. For 10 years, you've operated one of the most successful companies in the industry while maintaining almost complete anonymity. Why reveal yourself now?" On screen, Naomi smiled. "I'm tired of hiding. For a long time I thought privacy was power. But I've learned that real power comes from being authentic. From standing in your truth even when it's uncomfortable. Let's talk about your personal life. The story that's been all over the news. Is it true that your husband didn't know about your wealth?" "That's correct. Can you help us understand why? Why hide something so fundamental from your spouse?" Naomi had prepared for this question. She'd practiced the answer until it felt natural. When you have significant wealth, especially when you're a woman, people treat you differently. They see the money before they see you. I wanted to know what it felt like to be loved for who I was, not what I had. So I created a life where I could be ordinary. Where someone could fall in love with me without any other motivation. But he didn't know anything about your real life. Doesn't that feel like a lie? I never lied. I just didn't share everything. There's a difference. I had my reasons and I thought they were good ones. Looking back, maybe I was naive. Maybe I was testing someone in a way that wasn't fair. But I genuinely wanted to believe that love could exist without wealth being part of the equation. Monica leaned forward. "And when your marriage ended? That must have been devastating." "It was. But it was also clarifying. I learned that you can't build a real relationship on partial truths. And I learned that some people will always see you as less than you are, no matter what you do or who you really are. My ex-husband thought I was ordinary and he treated me accordingly. When he decided I wasn't enough, he made that very clear. There's been a lot of public commentary about how your company handled the situation. Some people are calling it revenge. I call it accountability. 2 employees violated company policy. They were terminated according to established procedures. The fact that one of those employees was my husband doesn't change the rules. If anything, it means I had to be even more careful to do everything correctly. Every termination was reviewed by legal counsel. Every action was documented and justified. There was no revenge, just consequences. But the timing? The timing was when I discovered the full extent of the policy violations. Yes, that discovery came after personal events. But that doesn't make the violations any less real or the terminations any less justified. Monica studied her. You know people are going to say this was personal. Let them say it. I know the truth. I ran my company the way it should be run, with clear rules, consistent enforcement, and no special treatment for anyone. Even my husband. The interview continued for another 20 minutes. They talked about Baptiste Technologies' growth, about Naomi's plans for expansion, about her vision for the future. They talked about her grandmother Dorothy and the legacy she'd inherited. They didn't talk about Brandon again. When the interview ended, social media exploded. She's a queen. Handled that with so much grace. No special treatment for anyone. Even my husband. I screamed. This is what happens when you underestimate a woman. She doesn't get mad. She gets methodical. Brandon Mitchell watching this right now like face screaming in fear. But not everyone was supportive. Some people criticized Naomi for being cold, calculating, manipulative. She set him up to fail. That's messed up. Imagine hiding your wealth from your spouse. That's not testing someone, that's lying. Rich people really think they can play games with regular people's lives. Naomi read the comments with Richard the next morning in her office. The negative responses are about 30%, Richard said. Mostly from people who think the power imbalance was unfair. And the other 70%? They think you're a hero. That you exposed a cheater and handled it like a boss. The company's social media following has tripled in the last week. We've had 6 major publications request interviews. Forbes wants to put you on the cover. What about the employees? How are they responding? Morale is high. People are proud to work for you now that they know who you are. We've had a 15% increase in job applications. Everyone wants to work for the secret billionaire who took down her cheating husband. Naomi smiled slightly. That's not how I describe it. That's how everyone else is describing it. Her phone buzzed. A text from Janet, her head of security. Your ex tried to enter the building this morning. Security stopped him. He's in the lobby causing a scene. Do you want me to handle it? Naomi stood up. I'll handle it. Richard looked alarmed. Are you sure that's a good idea? He wants to talk? Fine. We'll talk. One time. Then it's done forever. She took the private elevator down to the lobby. Through the security monitors, she could see Brandon arguing with 2 security guards. He looked terrible, wrinkled clothes, unshaven, desperate. Part of her felt sorry for him. A small part. The part that remembered when she'd loved him, when she'd thought they had something real. But that part was quiet now. Overpowered by the part that remembered him throwing her belongings on the lawn. The part that heard his voice on the recordings mocking her to Amber. The part that knew he was only here now because his life had fallen apart. She walked into the lobby. Ms. Baptiste, the security guard said. I'm sorry we tried to. It's fine. Give us 5 minutes. Private conference room. She looked at Brandon. You want to talk? Let's talk. She led him to a small conference room off the lobby. Glass walls, minimalist furniture, completely visible to everyone in the building. She wanted witnesses. Brandon looked around, taking in the expensive space, the company logo on the wall, the view of the city beyond. This is where you work, he said. This is where I've always worked. How did I not know? How did I never see it? Because you never asked questions. You never wanted to know more about me. You were satisfied with the version of me that fit your life. Naomi crossed her arms. You have 5 minutes. Say whatever you need to say. Brandon sat down heavily. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm sorry for cheating, for lying, for throwing you out, for everything. Okay. That's it? Just okay? What do you want me to say, Brandon? That I forgive you? That I understand? That we can work it out? I want you to know that I made a mistake. A huge mistake. And I'm paying for it. Yes, you are. That's how consequences work. Did you know? He asked suddenly. When you married me, did you know I was like this? Did you marry me expecting me to fail? Naomi considered the question. No. I married you because I thought I loved you. And I thought you loved me. I hoped that by giving you a good life without you knowing where it came from, your love would be genuine. But it wasn't. And when someone younger and prettier paid attention to you, you threw me away without a second thought. I thought you were boring. Plain. Going nowhere. I know. I heard you say it. Multiple times. Brandon's face went pale. You heard me? I have excellent security systems. In the cars. In the house. Everywhere. I heard everything you said about me. How I wasn't good enough. How you deserved better. How Amber was an upgrade. Naomi kept her voice even. You didn't just betray me with your actions. You destroyed me with your words. And you did it while living in my house, driving my cars, spending my money. I didn't know. Would it have mattered? If I'd been the boring mid-level employee you thought I was, would that make it okay to cheat? To humiliate me? To throw me out like trash? Brandon had no answer. You're not sorry you hurt me, Naomi continued. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry you lost the comfortable life. You're sorry people think you're an idiot. But you're not actually sorry for what you did to another human being who loved you. That's not true. I do feel bad. You feel bad for yourself. There's a difference. She stood up. Our 5 minutes are up. Sign the divorce papers if you haven't already. Stay away from me. Move on with your life. That's all I have to say to you. Naomi, please. Ms. Baptiste, she corrected. You don't get to call me by my first name anymore. You gave up that right when you chose her over me. She walked to the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I don't hate you. I don't think about you enough to hate you. You're just someone I used to know who showed me exactly what I didn't want in a partner. So thank you for that. You freed me to find something real. She left him sitting in the conference room and didn't look back. Security escorted him out of the building 3 minutes later. That evening, Naomi had dinner with Richard, Patricia, and Janet at an upscale restaurant. They were celebrating, not Brandon's downfall but Naomi's freedom. To Naomi, Patricia raised her glass. Who proved that the best revenge is massive success. To Naomi, Richard and Janet echoed. They clinked glasses. How do you feel? Janet asked. Now that you've faced him? Empty, Naomi admitted. I thought I'd feel victorious or satisfied or something. But I just feel empty. Like I wasted 6 years of my life on someone who never deserved me. You didn't waste them, Patricia said. You learned from them. Now you know what you don't want. Now you know your worth. Those are valuable lessons. Expensive lessons. The best ones usually are. Naomi's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Hi, this is James. We met at the charity gala last month. I saw your interview. You were amazing. Would you like to get coffee sometime? No pressure. She showed the message to the table. James from the gala? Janet pulled out her tablet and started typing. Let me run a background check. You're going to background check everyone I date now? Yes, obviously. That's my job. Patricia laughed. Let her do her job. The last guy you dated without a background check didn't work out so well. Naomi smiled. Fair point. Her phone buzzed again. Another message, this time from a business contact. Saw your interview. You're inspiring. If you ever want to talk about collaboration, let me know. And another, thank you for being brave enough to tell your story. You helped me realize I deserve better too. And another, you're a role model for my daughter. Thank you for showing her that women can be powerful and successful. The messages kept coming. Strangers thanking her, supporting her, telling her their own stories of betrayal and resilience. The world is watching, Richard said. You've become more than just a CEO. You've become a symbol. I just wanted to run my company. Too late for that. You're a movement now. Naomi looked at the messages. All these people she'd never met, all inspired by her story. It was overwhelming, but it was also empowering. For 10 years she'd hidden who she was. She'd made herself small to fit into Brandon's world. She'd pretended to be ordinary when she was extraordinary. Not anymore. Now the world knew who Naomi Baptiste was. And she was just getting started. 3 months later, Naomi was in the middle of a board meeting when Janet texted her. Your ex is outside the building again. Says he needs to see you. Should I call the police? Naomi sighed and excused herself from the meeting. This had become a pattern. Every few weeks, Brandon would show up, desperate to talk to her. Every time, security would turn him away. Every time, she'd ignore him. But this time felt different. This time, according to Janet's follow-up text, he'd been crying in the lobby for 20 minutes. Against her better judgment, Naomi agreed to see him. One final time. She met him in the same conference room as before. He looked worse than last time, thinner, older, defeated. His clothes were cheap and ill-fitting. His shoes were worn out. Thank you for seeing me, he said quietly. Naomi didn't sit down. Make it quick. I have a meeting. I know. I shouldn't be here. But I needed to say this in person. He took a shaky breath. I'm not here to ask for anything. Not money, not help, not forgiveness. I'm here to tell you that you were right about everything. Okay. I was a terrible husband. I took you for granted. I treated you like you were less than me when you were so much more. I cheated because I was selfish and weak and stupid. And I lost the best thing that ever happened to me. Naomi waited. Amber and I broke up the day after we got evicted. She said I was pathetic. That I'd ruined her life. That she never really loved me, she just thought I was going places. He laughed bitterly. Turns out I was going places. Just not the ones she wanted. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know that I understand now. I understand what I had and what I threw away. I understand that you weren't boring or plain or ordinary. You were extraordinary and I was too dumb to see it. Brandon. I'm working at a call center now. Making $12 an hour. I live in a studio apartment in a bad part of town. I can't afford a car, so I take the bus. I'm nobody. Nothing. He met her eyes. And I did this to myself. Not you. Me. Every decision that led me here was mine. And I just wanted you to know that I know that. Naomi felt something. Not pity exactly. Not sympathy. Maybe just a recognition of how far he'd fallen. I appreciate you saying that, she said carefully. But it doesn't change anything. I know. We're divorced. We're done. You need to stop coming here. I know that too. He pulled an envelope from his pocket. This is for you. I'm not asking you to read it now. Or ever. But I wrote it and I wanted you to have it. He set the envelope on the table and stood up. I'm sorry, Naomi. For all of it. I hope you find someone who deserves you. Someone who sees you for who you really are. Someone who would never make the mistakes I made. He walked toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I did love you. I just didn't love you enough. And that's the worst part. I had everything I needed and I convinced myself I needed more. I hope you can be happy. You deserve it. He left. Naomi stood alone in the conference room, staring at the envelope. Part of her wanted to throw it away without reading it. Part of her was curious. She picked it up. Inside was a handwritten letter. Several pages, front and back, in Brandon's messy handwriting. Dear Naomi. I've started this letter 100 times and thrown it away 100 times. I don't know if there's anything I can say that will matter. I don't know if you'll even read this. But I have to try. I've spent the last 3 months thinking about our marriage. Really thinking about it, not just the version I told myself to justify my actions. And I've realized how blind I was. You made me feel like a king. Every day you built me up. You supported my career, encouraged my dreams, made me feel like I could do anything. And I took all of that and threw it in your face. I told myself you were boring because you didn't care about material things. I told myself you were plain because you didn't wear makeup or expensive clothes. I told myself you were holding me back because you didn't want to go out every night or spend money we didn't have. But you weren't any of those things. You were grounded. You were secure. You knew who you were and what mattered. And I mistook your confidence for complacency. I cheated because Amber made me feel special. She laughed at my jokes. She wore pretty dresses. She wanted to go to fancy restaurants. She made me feel like I was more than just ordinary. But here's the truth I finally understand. You made me feel special too. You made me feel loved and valued and important. The difference was that your love was real and hers was an illusion. She loved what she thought I could give her. You loved who I was even though I wasn't anyone special. Except I was special to you. And I threw that away. When I found out who you really are, what you built, what you accomplished, what you hid from me, I was angry at first. I thought you'd lied to me. Betrayed me. Set me up to fail. But you didn't set me up. You gave me every opportunity to be a good person, a good husband, a good man. And I failed all on my own. I failed because when things got comfortable, I got bored. When someone prettier paid attention to me, I strayed. When I thought I could do better, I tried. And now I know the truth, I could never do better than you. You were the best thing in my life and I was too stupid to realize it. I'm not writing this to ask for anything. I know we're done. I know I destroyed any chance we had. I know you've moved on and you should. You deserve someone who sees you, really sees you, and loves what they see. I'm writing this because you deserve to know that I'm sorry. Truly deeply sorry. Not sorry I got caught. Not sorry I lost the money I didn't know existed. Just sorry that I hurt you. That I disrespected you. That I made you feel like you weren't enough when you were more than enough all along. I hope you're happy, Naomi. I hope you find everything you're looking for. I hope someone loves you the way you should have been loved from the beginning. And I hope someday when you think about our marriage, you can remember at least a few good moments. Because there were good moments before I ruined everything. I'm sorry. Brandon. Naomi folded the letter and put it back in the envelope. She felt nothing. Not anger. Not sadness. Not even satisfaction that he finally understood what he'd lost. Just nothing. Because Brandon's apology, while probably sincere, changed nothing. It didn't undo the betrayal. It didn't erase the pain. It didn't make up for the 2 years of lies and mockery and disrespect. It was just words on a page from someone who used to matter and didn't anymore. She threw the letter in the trash on her way back to the board meeting. That evening, Naomi met James for dinner. The chef she'd been casually dating for the last month. He was sweet, funny, genuine. He'd asked her out before he knew who she was, and he treated her the same after he found out. "How was your day?" he asked, pouring her wine. "Complicated. My ex showed up at my office again." "Again? Is this becoming a problem? Should I be worried about some guy stalking you?" She smiled. "Security has it handled. He's not dangerous, just pathetic." "Did you talk to him?" "Briefly. He apologized. Again." "Do you believe him?" Naomi thought about that. "I believe he's sorry things turned out this way for him. I believe he regrets his choices. But do I believe he actually understands what he did wrong? I'm not sure. Does it matter? No. Not anymore." James reached across the table and took her hand. "Good. Because he's your past. And you deserve someone who's present, who sees you, who appreciates everything you are." "Someone like you?" "I was going to say someone like me, yes." He grinned. "But I didn't want to be presumptuous." Naomi laughed. Felt good to laugh. Good to be with someone who liked her for her, not for what she could give him. "Tell me about your day," she said. "I want to hear about something other than corporate drama." James launched into a story about a wedding reception he'd catered, complete with dramatic descriptions of demanding in-laws and last-minute menu changes. Naomi listened, genuinely interested, genuinely present. This was what she'd been looking for all along. Someone who saw her as a person, not as a means to an end. Someone who wanted to share their day with her, not just take from her. Someone who was building their own life and invited her to be part of it, rather than expecting her to be the foundation. After dinner, walking back to her car, James said, "I know we've only been dating a month. And I know you're probably not looking for anything serious after what you went through. But I want you to know, I'm here. I'm real. And I'm not going anywhere unless you want me to." Naomi stopped walking. "You know about my money. About my company. About everything." "I do. And that doesn't intimidate you?" "Why would it intimidate me? You built something amazing. You should be proud of that." "I'm proud of you. But at the end of the day, you're still just Naomi. The woman who laughs at my terrible jokes and tells me when my cooking needs more salt. The woman who's brilliant and kind and funny. That's who I'm dating. Everything else is just details." Naomi kissed him. It wasn't dramatic or movie-like. It was just a kiss. Simple, genuine, real. And it was perfect. Because this time she wasn't hiding. She wasn't pretending. She wasn't testing anyone. She was just being herself. And he loved her for it. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Naomi stood in front of a crowd of 500 women at the Women in Tech conference. "When I built my company," she said into the microphone, "I did it in secret. I hid behind holding companies and trusts and anonymous board meetings. I told myself it was for privacy, for protection. But the truth was I was afraid. The audience was silent, listening intently. I was afraid that if people knew who I was, they wouldn't take me seriously. I was afraid that if the world knew a woman, especially a young black woman, was running a billion-dollar tech company, I'd face scrutiny, criticism, doubt. So I hid." She paused, looking out at the sea of faces. Women of all ages, all races, all backgrounds. And then my personal life fell apart. My husband, who I'd hidden my success from, betrayed me. He threw me away because he thought I wasn't good enough. Because he couldn't see my value. Murmurs of sympathy from the crowd. When that happened, I had a choice. I could stay hidden, stay safe, stay protected behind my walls of anonymity. Or I could step into the light and say, "This is who I am. This is what I've built. And I'm not ashamed of any of it." She smiled. "I chose the light. And yes, it was scary. Yes, people criticized me. Yes, my story became public in ways I never wanted. But you know what? I survived. More than survived. I thrived." The crowd started applauding. Because here's what I learned. Hiding who you are doesn't protect you. It diminishes you. When you make yourself small to fit into someone else's vision of who you should be, you lose yourself. And that loss hurts more than any betrayal ever could. The applause grew louder. So my advice to all of you is this: be big. Be loud. Be exactly who you are, unapologetically. Build your empires. Claim your success. And if someone can't handle your brilliance, your power, your success, that's their problem, not yours. Standing ovation. Naomi smiled through the tears that threatened to fall. These women, they understood. They'd all faced similar challenges, similar doubts, similar men who couldn't handle their strength. After the speech, dozens of women lined up to talk to her, to thank her, to share their own stories. One woman, probably in her 50s, took Naomi's hand and said, "My husband left me when I got promoted above him. 20 years of marriage, gone because his ego couldn't handle my success. Your story gave me hope that I can survive this." "You can," Naomi said firmly. "You will. And you'll come out stronger." Another woman, younger, said, "I'm about to start my own company, but I've been hiding it from my boyfriend. He doesn't know how much money I've raised or how big this could be. What should I do?" Naomi looked at her seriously. "Tell him. All of it. And watch how he reacts. If he celebrates with you, supports you, stands beside you, he's a keeper. If he feels threatened, tries to diminish your success or makes it about him, leave. Because it won't get better. It'll only get worse." The woman nodded, tears in her eyes. "Thank you." That evening, Naomi had dinner with her team, Richard, Patricia, Janet, and a few other key employees who'd become friends over the years. "That speech was incredible," Patricia said. "You're becoming a real voice for women in business." "I'm just telling my truth." "Your truth is powerful." Forbes called. They want to do a cover story, Naomi Baptiste, the billionaire who stopped hiding. "Are we doing it?" "That's up to you. Are you ready to be fully public?" Naomi thought about it. 6 months ago she would have said no. But now, yes, I'm ready. Let's do it. Richard raised his glass. To Naomi, who turned her biggest pain into her greatest strength. To Naomi, everyone echoed. Later that night, Naomi sat in her penthouse with James. They were cooking together, his idea. He was teaching her how to make homemade pasta, and she was learning that she was terrible at it. "This looks like a blob," she said, holding up her misshapen ravioli. "It's a rustic blob," James corrected, grinning. "Very artisanal." She threw flour at him. He threw some back. Within minutes, they were covered in flour, laughing like teenagers, the kitchen a disaster. This, Naomi thought, was happiness. Not the big moments or the grand gestures. Just this, cooking in a messy kitchen with someone who made her laugh. "I love you," James said suddenly. Naomi froze. It was the first time either of them had said it. "You don't have to say it back," he added quickly. "I just wanted you to know. No pressure. No expectations. Just, I love you." Naomi looked at him. Really looked at him. Covered in flour, smiling nervously, waiting for her response but not demanding it. "I love you too," she said. And she meant it. Not the desperate love of her youth, where she tried to prove she was worthy of affection. Not the performance love of her marriage, where she'd hidden herself to be loved. Just simple, honest love between two people who saw each other clearly and chose each other anyway. They kissed, flour and all. The next morning, Naomi woke up to an email from Brandon's lawyer. He was requesting to adjust the divorce terms. He wanted to ask for spousal support. She called Patricia. "He's asking for money?" Patricia sounded incredulous. "After everything?" "Apparently his lawyer thinks he's entitled to support since I was the primary earner during the marriage. Which you were, though he didn't know it. This is absurd. You want me to fight it?" Naomi thought about it. She could fight it. She'd probably win. But it would mean more lawyers, more meetings, more time thinking about Brandon. How much is he asking for? $3,000 a month for 3 years. Give him $2,000 for 1 year. Make it a lump sum payment so this is completely done. I never want to deal with him or his lawyer again. Naomi, you don't have to give him anything. I know. But $24,000 is nothing to me, and it's enough to help him get on his feet. After that, he's on his own. Forever. Draw up the papers. Make it very clear that this is the final settlement and there will be no further contact or requests. Patricia sighed. You're too generous. I'm not generous. I'm done. There's a difference. I'm paying to make him go away permanently. The settlement was finalized within a week. Brandon signed immediately. Naomi never heard from him again. 3 months later, Naomi sat in her office, looking at the latest quarterly reports. Baptiste Technologies had grown another 18%. They'd acquired 2 smaller companies and expanded into 3 new markets. The company value was now estimated at $4 billion. But more importantly, Naomi was happy. She was dating James seriously now. They talked about moving in together, taking the next step. He'd met her family, Her cousins, her aunts and uncles, the extended family who'd always known she was special. They loved him. She'd started a foundation in her grandmother Dorothy's name, providing scholarships and business grants to women in tech. The first class of recipients had just been announced. 20 brilliant women who would get funding to start their own companies. She'd done several more interviews, sharing her story, inspiring other women to own their success and demand respect. And she'd stopped hiding. One evening, she visited her grandmother's grave. She did this sometimes when she needed to think or when she wanted to share good news. "I did it, Grandma," she said, placing flowers on the headstone. "I built the empire you always knew I could build. And I'm doing it in the light now. No more hiding." The wind rustled through the trees. "You were right about everything. About building something real. About not letting people make you small. About believing in my own worth." Naomi smiled. "And you were right that the right person would love me for me. I found him. Finally." She sat on the bench nearby watching the sunset. "I wasted 6 years on someone who didn't deserve me. But I learned from it. I learned what real love looks like. I learned that I don't need to hide to be loved. I learned that my success isn't something to be ashamed of, it's something to celebrate." Her phone buzzed. A text from James. "Dinner's ready when you are. I made your favorite." Naomi smiled and stood up. "I have to go, Grandma. But I'll be back soon. I have so much to tell you." She walked back to her car, to her life, to her future. A future that was bright and open and full of possibility. Brandon was somewhere out there, living his small life, probably still bitter about what he'd lost. Amber was probably working some low-level job, regretting her choices. And Naomi? Naomi was living her best life. Running her empire. Loving a good man. Inspiring other women. Being exactly who she was meant to be. She'd learned the most important lesson. Revenge isn't about destroying someone else. It's about building yourself up so high that the person who hurt you becomes irrelevant. And that's exactly what she'd done. Years later, when people asked her about her ex-husband and the scandal that had made her famous, she'd smile and say, "That was a long time ago. I barely remember it." And she'd mean it. Because Brandon Mitchell was just a footnote in the story of Naomi Baptiste. A cautionary tale. A brief detour on the road to something real.